The envelope arrived at my auto shop on my 45th birthday, delivered by a guy in a $1,000 suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I was under the hood of a '98 Camaro, grease up to my elbows, when he cleared his throat. "Nicholas Carter? That's me." I wiped my hands on a rag, already knowing this wasn't good news. Nobody sends lawyers to deliver birthday wishes. "Divorce papers. Your wife requests you review these immediately." He handed me the manila envelope like it might explode. "She also wanted me to inform you that custody arrangements have been predetermined based on your circumstances." I stared at the envelope, feeling something cold settle in my chest. 20 years of marriage, 2 kids, and this is how it ends. With a messenger boy in my garage while I'm covered in motor oil. Predetermined how? The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "Your daughter Emma has expressed her preference to live with her mother. Your son Max. Well, the court will consider what's best for the children." I opened the envelope right there, scanning the legal jargon. Everything. She wanted everything. The house, the kids, half my business, alimony that would leave me eating ramen for the next decade. My hands shook slightly as I read Emma's statement about wanting nothing to do with me. "There's more," the lawyer continued. "Mrs. Carter has documented several incidents of verbal abuse and neglect. The court date is set for next month." I folded the papers carefully, walked to my desk, and pulled out a sealed envelope I'd been keeping in the drawer for 3 weeks, ever since I'd found that burner phone in Danielle's car. "Give this to my wife," I said, handing it to him. "Tell her it's my birthday gift to her." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The lawyer took it, clearly relieved to be leaving. After he drove away, I sat in my office chair, surrounded by the familiar smell of motor oil and metal, and laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was punching something. My phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. "Saw the lawyer. Everything okay, Nick?" Small towns. Everyone knows your business before you do? I walked back to the Camaro and slammed the hood shut. The owner wouldn't be picking it up until tomorrow, but I needed something to keep my hands busy. That's when I decided to take a drive past Danielle's law firm. The building was one of those modern glass towers that screamed success. I parked across the street and watched the entrance, not sure what I was looking for. Maybe I wanted to see her face when she got my envelope. Maybe I just wanted to understand how we'd gotten here. I didn't have to wait long. Danielle emerged from the building at exactly 5:30, same as always. Even from a distance, she looked perfect. Tailored suit, hair pulled back in that way that made her look older and more serious. She was talking on her phone, laughing at something. Behind her walked Troy Brennan, her business partner. Tall, gym fit, the kind of guy who probably spent more on his haircut than I made in a day. He put his hand on the small of her back as they walked to her car. That's when I knew for certain. The burner phone, the late nights, the way she'd been looking at me like I was something she'd stepped in. It all made sense now. I followed them at a distance, staying back far enough that they wouldn't notice. They drove to the Riverside District, the expensive part of town where all the condos had names like The Meridian and Sunset Towers. Troy's BMW pulled into the parking garage of a building called Harbor View. I parked on the street and walked to the building. Through the lobby windows, I could see them waiting for the elevator. Danielle had her hand on his chest, looking up at him the way she used to look at me. The elevator doors closed, and I stood there on the sidewalk, feeling like the biggest fool in the world. 20 years, 2 kids, a mortgage we'd struggled to pay when the business was just starting. All those nights she'd worked late, all those business trips, all those times she'd been too tired to talk when she got home. I walked back to my truck, but instead of leaving, I drove into the parking garage. Troy's BMW was parked in spot 4B, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. I sat in my truck for maybe 10 minutes, engine running, thinking about what kind of man I wanted to be. Then I got out and walked over to his car. I didn't do anything crazy, just loosened his valve stems enough that the tires would be flat by morning. Childish maybe, but it felt good. I also left a note under his windshield wiper. Stay away from my family. As I drove home, my phone rang. Danielle. What the hell is this envelope supposed to mean? Her voice was sharp, angry. Happy birthday to me too, sweetheart. Don't play games, Nick. What's in here? Why don't you open it and find out? There was a long pause. I could hear paper rustling. Where did you get these? Her voice had changed. Quieter now, scared. Does it matter? The question is, what are you going to do about it? I hung up and drove home to my empty house, where my kids were probably packing their things and my wife was probably calling her lawyer. but for the first time in months, I was smiling. The envelope had contained copies of the text messages from her burner phone. Every single one. Including the ones where she and Troy discussed how pathetic I was, how she couldn't wait to be rid of me, how they were planning to take everything I'd worked for. My birthday had started with divorce papers. It was ending with the first move in what was going to be a very interesting game. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Danielle and a text message that made my coffee taste like ash. Dad, Mom told me everything. I can't believe you've been spying on her. I'm ashamed to be your daughter. Emma. 17 years old, and she could already cut deeper than any lawyer's letter. I was at the shop by 7, trying to lose myself in work, when Big Ray showed up. Ray owned the boxing gym next door and had been my friend since I'd moved to town. He was the kind of guy who could spot trouble from 3 blocks away. Heard about the divorce, he said, settling his considerable bulk onto the folding chair I kept for customers. Also heard about Troy Brennan's car troubles. I looked up from the engine I was rebuilding. Car troubles? 4 flat tires and a sugar-filled gas tank. Funny thing about sugar, though. Doesn't actually hurt an engine, just makes a mess. Whoever did it was either stupid or sending a message. Interesting theory. Ray studied my face. You know what your problem is, Nick? You're too nice. Always have been. Guy walks into your house, sits at your table, eats your food, and you ask him if he wants seconds. What's that supposed to mean? Means maybe it's time to stop being so accommodating. After Ray left, I spent the morning trying to focus on work, but my mind kept wandering. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a call from Max's school. Mr. Carter, this is Principal Morrison. I'm calling about the incident with Max this morning. My stomach dropped. What incident? He got into a fight with another student. The other boy was teasing him about your family situation. Max threw the first punch. Is he okay? He's fine. A little bruised. But Mr. Carter, I have to ask, is everything all right at home? Max seems very angry lately. I drove to the school and found Max sitting in the principal's office, his shirt torn and his lip swollen. At 12, he was already showing signs of the Carter stubborn streak. Same dark hair, same tendency to bottle everything up until it exploded. You okay, buddy? He shrugged. Tommy Michaels said you were a loser. Said his dad heard you were broke and that's why Mom was leaving you. And you hit him? I hit him twice. Despite everything, I felt proud of him. Come on, let's go get some ice cream. We drove to Murphy's Diner, the kind of place where the waitresses knew everyone's order and the coffee was strong enough to wake the deceased. Max ordered a chocolate shake and didn't say much until we were halfway through it. Are you and Mom getting divorced? No point in lying. Yeah, we are. Is it because of Mr. Brennan? Smart kid. Too smart. What do you know about Mr. Brennan? I've seen him at the house when you're at work. Mom said he was helping with legal stuff, but he trailed off, stirring his shake with the straw. But what? But they were laughing a lot, and one time I saw him put his hand on her back, like the way you used to. I felt something twist in my chest. Max, I want you to know that none of this is your fault, or Emma's fault. Sometimes adults make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes hurt the people they love. Did you make a mistake? Probably a lot of them. Did Mom? I looked at my son, this kid who was trying so hard to understand why his world was falling apart, and I made a decision. Yeah, she did. That afternoon, I drove Max home to find Danielle's car in the driveway next to a BMW I didn't recognize. Not Troy's car, but close enough to make my jaw clench. Inside, I could hear voices in the kitchen. Danielle was talking to someone, her voice animated in a way it hadn't been with me in years. Max, why don't you go upstairs and work on your homework? I walked into the kitchen and found Danielle sitting at our table with a woman I recognized from her law firm, Jennifer Walsh, the public relations specialist who handled damage control for their high-profile cases. Nick, Danielle stood up quickly. We were just discussing some legal matters. In my kitchen? It's still my house, too. Jennifer Walsh smiled the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. Mr. Carter, I'm sorry to meet under these circumstances. I was just explaining to Danielle how important it is to control the narrative during divorce proceedings. The narrative? Public perception, social media. These things matter, especially when children are involved. I looked between the two women and felt something cold settle in my stomach. What narrative would that be? Danielle crossed her arms. The truth, Nick, about your drinking, your anger issues, the way you've been neglecting this family for years. My anger issues? The incident at Troy's building, the threatening note, the property damage. I loosened some valve stems, hardly property damage. Jennifer Walsh was taking notes. So you admit to vandalizing Mr. Brennan's vehicle? I stared at her, understanding dawning. You're building a case. We're protecting ourselves, Danielle said. And protecting the children? From what? From you. That night, after Jennifer Walsh left and Danielle retreated to the guest bedroom she'd been using for the past month, I sat in my garage with a beer and thought about Ray's words. Too nice, always too accommodating. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Troy. We need to talk. Meet me at Murphy's Diner tomorrow at 8 p.m. Come alone. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, See you there. But I had no intention of going alone, and I had no intention of being accommodating anymore. Murphy's Diner at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night was exactly what you'd expect. Half-empty, fluorescent lights buzzing, the smell of coffee and fried food hanging in the air like a comfortable old coat. I got there 15 minutes early and took a booth in the back where I could see the entrance. Troy walked in exactly on time, looking around nervously before spotting me. He was wearing jeans and a polo shirt, trying to look casual, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. This wasn't his element. Nick? He slid into the booth across from me. Thanks for coming. Wouldn't miss it. The waitress, Betty, came over with coffee without being asked. She'd been working here since I was a kid, and she had that small-town radar for trouble. Evening, boys. You eating or just drinking coffee and staring at each other? Just coffee, Troy said. Make mine a burger, Betty. Medium rare, extra pickles. After she left, Troy leaned forward. Look, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Did we? When was that? When you started sleeping with my wife, or when you helped her plan to take my kids away? His face flushed. It's not like that. What's it like then? Danielle and I, we have a connection, a professional relationship that became something more. It wasn't planned. Nothing ever is, right? You just accidentally ended up in bed with a married woman. Your marriage was over long before I came along. Danielle told me you two haven't been happy for years. I took a sip of coffee and studied his face. Mid-30s, probably worked out every day, the kind of guy who used product in his hair. Everything I wasn't. So this is the part where you tell me you're doing me a favor? I'm trying to find a way we can all move forward without destroying each other. Betty brought my burger, and I took a bite before responding. What did you have in mind? The divorce doesn't have to be ugly. You give Danielle what she's asking for, and we make sure the custody arrangement is fair. The kids spend time with both parents. And you? What about me? Where do you fit into this happy little arrangement? Troy shifted uncomfortably. Danielle and I are planning to get married after the divorce is final. I set down my burger and looked at him. Really looked at him. This man who thought he could sit across from me and negotiate the terms of my family's destruction. You know what's funny, Troy? 3 months ago, I didn't even know you existed. Danielle mentioned a new partner at the firm, someone young and ambitious, but I never paid attention. I was too busy working, or trying to keep my business afloat, trying to be a good father. Nick, I know this is hard. Do you? Do you know what it's like to find out your wife has been lying to you for months? To discover that your daughter thinks you're a failure? To realize that everyone in town is talking about you behind your back? I never wanted it to happen this way. But it did happen this way, and now you want to sit here and negotiate like we're discussing a business deal. Troy straightened up, and I saw a flash of the arrogance that had probably attracted Danielle in the first place. Look, the reality is that Danielle doesn't love you anymore. Maybe she never did. You can fight this and make everyone miserable, or you can accept it and try to salvage what you can. I finished my burger in silence, thinking about what Ray had said. Too accommodating, always too nice. You're right, I said finally. Fighting this would make everyone miserable. Troy looked relieved. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. Oh, I'm being very reasonable. In fact, I've been thinking about this situation a lot lately. About you and Danielle, about my kids, about what kind of man I want to be. And I've decided I don't want to be the kind of man who makes things easy for people who betray him. The relief faded from Troy's face. What does that mean? I stood up, threw a 20 on the table, and looked down at him. It means you should have stayed away from my family. I was halfway to the door when he called after me. Nick, don't do anything stupid. I turned back. Stupid? Like trusting my wife? Like believing that 20 years of marriage meant something? Like thinking that other men would respect the boundaries of my family? I'm warning you. No, Troy. I'm warning you. This isn't over. Not even close. I left him sitting there and drove home through the quiet streets of my small town, past the houses where people were settling in for the evening, watching television with their families, living their normal lives. When I got home, Danielle was waiting in the kitchen. "How did it go? You knew about the meeting?" "Troy called me. He was worried you might do something reckless." "Like what?" "Like what you did to his car." I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. "Danielle, can I ask you something?" "When did you stop loving me?" She looked surprised by the question. "Nick, I'm serious. Was it gradual? Did you wake up one morning and realize you couldn't stand the sight of me? Or was it when Troy showed up and you realized there were other options?" "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" She sat down at the table, suddenly looking tired. "We grew apart, Nick. We became different people. You're content with your little garage, your small-town life, your simple pleasures. I wanted more." "More what?" "More everything. More success, more excitement, more ambition. Troy understands that. He has goals, plans for the future. And I don't? You fix cars, Nick. You drink beer with Ray and watch football on Sundays. When was the last time we talked about the future? When was the last time you surprised me with anything?" I nodded slowly. "You're right. I should have seen this coming." "I'm glad you understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly. You got bored with your boring husband and your boring life, so you decided to trade up. That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed. "You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been telling me you were unhappy before you started sleeping with someone else. Fair would have been giving me a chance to fix things before you decided to destroy our family." "I tried to talk to you?" "No, you didn't. You made your decision, and then you worked backward to justify it. You turned our daughter against me, you're planning to take my son, and you're trying to paint me as the villain so you can feel better about what you've done." Danielle stood up, her face flushed. "Maybe you are the villain, Nick. Maybe you've always been the villain, and you're just too self-absorbed to see it." I stared at my wife, this woman I'd loved for 20 years, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. "You know what, Danielle? You might be right." The next morning, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my lawyer, a guy named Pete Morrison, who'd handled my business incorporation and wasn't afraid of a fight. The second was to my accountant, asking him to audit every financial transaction Danielle had made in the past year. The third was to a private investigator named Carol Webb, who specialized in divorce cases. "I need to know everything," I told Carol. "Where they go, what they do, who they talk to. I need ammunition." "How much ammunition are we talking about?" "Enough to win." Carol was a former police detective who'd started her own agency after retiring. She was thorough, discreet, and expensive. But I'd been saving money for years, thinking I might expand the garage. Now I had a better use for it. The first report came back 3 days later. Troy Brennan wasn't just Danielle's business partner and lover. He was also under investigation by the State Bar Association for mishandling client funds. His real estate license had been suspended twice for ethical violations, and he was behind on his child support payments to his ex-wife in Cleveland. The second report was even more interesting. Danielle had been transferring money from our joint accounts into a private account for 8 months. Small amounts, never enough to trigger my attention, but it added up to nearly $30,000. I was reading through the financial records when Emma came home from school. She barely looked at me as she headed for the stairs. "Emma, can we talk?" She stopped, but didn't turn around. About what?" "About us. About what's happening with your mother and me." "There's nothing to talk about. You're getting divorced because you can't handle the fact that Mom is successful and you're not." "Is that what she told you?" Emma turned around, and I was shocked by the anger in her face. "She didn't have to tell me anything. I have eyes. I can see how you look at her, how you try to make her feel guilty for having ambitions. Emma, that's not... And now you're trying to destroy her relationship with Troy because you're jealous. It's pathetic." The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. This was my daughter, the little girl I'd taught to ride a bike, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose bedtime stories I'd read for years. "I love you, Emma. Whatever happens between your mother and me, that will never change. If you loved me, you'd stop trying to hurt Mom." She went upstairs, and I heard her bedroom door slam. A few minutes later, Max came down to the kitchen. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm fine, buddy. Emma's been really mean lately." "She's confused. This is hard for everyone." Max sat down at the table. "Can I ask you something?" "Shoot." "Are you really trying to hurt Mom?" I looked at my son, this 12-year-old kid who was trying to make sense of his parents' war, and I realized I had a choice. I could lie to him, try to protect him from the ugliness, or I could treat him like he was smart enough to handle the truth. Your mother made some choices that hurt our family. I'm trying to protect what's left of it. By fighting with her? Sometimes, when someone hurts you, you have to fight back. Otherwise, they keep hurting you. Max nodded slowly. Like when Tommy Michaels called you a loser. Something like that. Are you going to win? I smiled for the first time in days. I'm going to try. That evening, I drove to Harborview Condos and parked across the street. Carol had told me that Troy and Danielle met there every Tuesday and Thursday evening. Sure enough, at 7:30, Danielle's car pulled into the parking garage. I waited until they were inside, then walked over to the building directory. Troy Brennan, Unit 12B. I took the elevator to the 12th floor and found his door. The hallway was empty, carpeted, expensive looking. I pressed my ear to the door and could hear voices inside. Danielle's laugh, the sound of music, the clink of glasses. They were having dinner, probably wine, probably planning their future together while my kids ate cereal at home. I pulled out my phone and called the building's main number. Harborview, this is security. Hi, this is Detective Morrison with the police department. We've had reports of a domestic disturbance in Unit 12B. Can you send someone up to check? Right away, Detective. I took the stairs down to the lobby and watched through the glass doors as the security guard got on the elevator. My phone was already recording when he knocked on Troy's door. The door opened, and I could see Troy in a bathrobe, looking confused. Behind him, Danielle appeared in what looked like one of his shirts. Evening, sir. We had a report of a disturbance. Everything okay up here? A disturbance? No, we're just having dinner. Mind if I take a look around? Just routine. Troy stepped aside, and the security guard entered. I stopped recording and walked back to my truck, smiling. The next morning, I uploaded the video to a private YouTube account and sent the link to 3 people. Danielle's boss at the law firm, Troy's ex-wife in Cleveland, and the president of the State Bar Association. Then I sat back and waited for the fireworks to begin. The fireworks started sooner than I expected. My phone rang at 6:30 in the morning, and Danielle's voice was shaking with rage. What did you do? Good morning to you too, sweetheart. Don't play games with me, Nick. My boss wants to see me in his office at 9 o'clock. Troy's ex-wife called him, screaming about the video. What did you do? I documented the truth. Isn't that what lawyers do? You're destroying everything. No, Danielle. You already did that. I'm just making sure everyone knows what kind of person they're dealing with. She hung up, and I got dressed for what I knew was going to be an interesting day. I was at the garage by 7, and Ray showed up with coffee and donuts. You look like a man who's been busy, he said, just taking your advice about being less accommodating. What did you do? I showed him the video on my phone. Ray watched it twice, then started laughing. You magnificent bastard. How long did it take you to plan this? About 5 minutes. Sometimes the best plans are the simple ones. My phone buzzed with a text from Pete Morrison, my lawyer. Need to see you ASAP. Danielle's attorney is filing for a restraining order. I drove to Pete's office, a cramped space above Murphy's diner that smelled like coffee and old law books. Pete was in his 60s, a former prosecutor who'd moved to private practice after getting tired of putting people in jail. They're claiming harassment, stalking, and intimidation, Pete said, spreading the papers across his desk. They want you to stay away from Danielle, Troy, and any property where they might be present. Can they do that? They can try. But harassment is a two-way street, and I've been looking at those financial records you gave me. Your wife has been systematically looting your joint accounts for months. That's called theft. What do you recommend? Fight fire with fire. We file our own motions. Fraud, adultery, theft of marital assets. We make this so expensive and so public that they'll beg for a settlement. Do it. That afternoon, I was working on a transmission rebuild when Emma walked into the garage. She was still in her school clothes, and her face was red from crying. Everyone at school is talking about the video. I put down my wrench and looked at her. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Find out what? That my father is a vindictive creep who spies on people? That your mother has been lying to all of us for months. She fell in love with someone else. That happens. Does it? Or did she decide she wanted a different life and work backward to justify it? Emma wiped her nose with her sleeve. Why can't you just let her be happy? Because her happiness is built on destroying our family. Our family was already broken. Was it? Or did she break it? Emma stared at me, and I could see her trying to process everything. She was 17, old enough to understand adult relationships, but young enough to want simple answers. I hate you, she said finally. I know, but I love you anyway. She left, and I went back to work, trying not to think about the look in her eyes. But I couldn't stop. This was the cost of fighting back. This was what it meant to stop being accommodating. That evening, Max and I were eating dinner when Danielle came home. She looked exhausted, defeated in a way I'd never seen before. "We need to talk," she said. "Max, why don't you go upstairs and work on your homework?" After he left, Danielle sat down across from me. My boss put me on administrative leave pending an investigation into my relationship with Troy. "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not. This is exactly what you wanted." What I wanted was a wife who didn't lie to me. What I wanted was a family that stayed together. What I wanted was some respect for 20 years of marriage. And now? What do you want now? I looked at this woman I'd loved for so long, this person who'd become a stranger, and I realized I didn't know how to answer that question. I want Emma to stop hating me. I want Max to feel safe. I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror without feeling like a fool. And me? What happens to me? That's up to you, Danielle. You made your choices. Now you get to live with them. She was quiet for a long moment. The restraining order hearing is tomorrow. I know. If you drop this crusade, I'll consider joint custody. And Troy? What about him? Is he part of the deal? He's part of my life now. Then there's nothing to discuss. Danielle stood up, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married 20 years ago. Younger, uncertain, vulnerable. I never meant for it to happen this way, Nick. But it did happen this way, and now we both have to live with the consequences. The next morning, I put on my best suit and drove to the courthouse. The hearing was in a small room with fluorescent lighting and uncomfortable chairs. Danielle sat with her attorney, a sharp-faced woman named Patricia Wells, who looked like she ate nails for breakfast. Troy was there too, sitting in the back row, trying to look invisible. He'd lost weight since our meeting at Murphy's Diner, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Judge Harrison was an older man with gray hair and the kind of face that had seen everything twice. He listened to both sides present their cases, then looked directly at me. "Mr. Carter, do you understand the seriousness of these allegations?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And do you deny that you've been following your wife and Mr. Brennan?" "No, Your Honor, but I deny that documenting adultery constitutes harassment." Patricia Wells stood up. "Your Honor, Mr. Carter has engaged in a pattern of intimidation and stalking that has caused my client significant emotional distress." "Your client caused herself emotional distress when she decided to have an affair," Pete Morrison replied. "Mr. Carter is simply protecting his interests in a contentious divorce proceeding." Judge Harrison looked at the evidence, including the video and the financial records Pete had submitted. After what felt like hours, he made his decision. "I'm going to deny the restraining order. However, Mr. Carter, I'm warning you that any further contact with Mr. Brennan or any interference with your wife's professional life will result in serious consequences. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor." Outside the courthouse, Danielle and Troy hurried to their car without looking at me. But as they drove away, I saw Troy's face in the passenger window. He looked scared. Good. He should be scared. Because this was far from over. 3 weeks later, I was closing up the garage when Carol Webb called with information that changed everything. "I've been digging into Troy's background like you asked," she said, "and I found something interesting about his relationship with your wife." "What kind of interesting?" "The kind that's going to make you very angry. Can you meet me at Murphy's in an hour?" I found Carol in the same booth where Troy and I had our conversation. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and the kind of intensity that came from years of police work. "Troy Brennan has been married twice," she said, sliding a folder across the table. "His first wife divorced him for adultery. His second wife filed a restraining order against him for harassment after she caught him cheating. Sounds like a pattern. It gets better. I talked to wife number 2. Guess how Troy met her?" "How?" "He was her divorce attorney." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Danielle's divorce attorney?" "No, but close. He represented her in a case against her previous firm 3 years ago. She won a settlement, and apparently Troy was very supportive during the process." 3 years ago?" Carol nodded. "Right around the time your wife started working late and taking business trips." I stared at the folder, understanding dawning. How long have they been together? Based on what I can piece together, at least 2.5 years. Maybe longer. I opened the folder and found photographs, bank records, hotel receipts, a complete timeline of deception that went back to when Emma was a sophomore in high school and Max was barely 10 years old. "There's more," Carol said. "Troy's been using your wife's law firm connections to set up real estate deals that are borderline fraudulent. If this comes out, Danielle won't just lose her job. She could face criminal charges. I drove home in a daze, my mind reeling. 2.5 years. While I was working 60-hour weeks to build my business, while I was coaching Max's Little League team, while I was helping Emma with her homework, my wife was building a new life with another man. At home, I found Emma in the kitchen making a sandwich. "Dad, you okay? You look sick." I sat down at the table and looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. She had Danielle's eyes, my stubborn chin, and an expression I couldn't quite read. "Emma, can I ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me?" "Okay. How long have you known about your mother and Troy?" She froze, the sandwich halfway to her mouth. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when did you first realize they were more than business partners?" Emma set down the sandwich and looked at her hands. "A long time." "How long?" "Since I was 15, maybe. I saw them together at a restaurant when Mom said she was working late. They looked like they were on a date." "And you never said anything?" "Mom asked me not to. She said you wouldn't understand, that you'd try to ruin things for her." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "She asked you to lie to me?" "She said it wasn't lying. She said it was protecting the family until she could figure things out." "For 2 years, Emma. You've been lying to me for 2 years." Emma started crying. "I didn't want to hurt you, but I also didn't want to hurt her. I was stuck in the middle, and I didn't know what to do." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You were 15 years old. None of this should have been your responsibility." "Are you mad at me?" "No, sweetheart. I'm mad at your mother for putting you in that position." That evening, after Max had gone to bed, I called Danielle and asked her to come home. She arrived an hour later, looking nervous. "What's this about, Nick?" I spread Carol's photographs across the kitchen table. Hotel receipts from business trips that never happened. Restaurant bills from romantic dinners. Bank records showing joint purchases going back 3 years. Danielle's face went white. 2.5 years, I said. "You've been planning this for 2.5 years. She sat down heavily. "Nick, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain why you involved Emma in your lies? Can you explain why you made our 15-year-old daughter complicit in destroying our family?" "I never meant—" "You never meant to get caught. There's a difference." Danielle was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I fell in love with him." "When?" "The first case we worked together. He was brilliant, ambitious, everything I wanted to be, and he saw something in me that you never did." "What did he see?" "Potential, a future, someone worth investing in." "And what did I see?" "A wife, a mother, someone to take care of your house and raise your children and be grateful for the privilege." I stared at her, this woman I'd shared a bed with for 20 years, and realized I was looking at a complete stranger. "So, you decided to destroy our family because you felt underappreciated?" "I decided to build a new life because the old one was slowly suffocating me." "And Emma? Max? What about them?" "They'll adjust. Children are resilient." "Emma's been lying for me for 2 years because you asked her to. Max gets in fights at school because kids are calling his father a loser. How is that resilient?" Danielle stood up, her composure returning. "I want you to stop this investigation. Stop digging into my relationship with Troy. Stop trying to sabotage my career. Or what? Or I'll make sure you never see the children again." I looked at my wife, and something fundamental shifted inside me. The last piece of love I'd been holding on to, the last hope for reconciliation, finally died. "You know what, Danielle? Do your worst, because I'm done being afraid of you." She left that night, and I haven't seen her since. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. I got joint custody of Max and weekend visitation with Emma. Danielle got the house, but I got to keep my business and my self-respect. Troy's real estate license was permanently revoked after the state investigation. Danielle was fired from her law firm and is currently working for a small practice in the next county. They're still together, as far as I know, but the fairy tale ending they planned didn't quite work out the way they expected. Emma and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship. She's in college now, studying psychology, and she says she wants to help families stay together. Max lives with me during the week and sees his mother on weekends. He's doing better in school, and he hasn't been in a fight since the divorce was finalized. As for me, I'm not the same man I was a year ago. I'm harder, more suspicious, less trusting. Some people might say I became the villain in this story. Maybe they're right. But I'm also a man who fought for his children, who refused to be destroyed by betrayal, who learned that sometimes you have to be willing to lose everything to save what matters most. And when I look in the mirror now, I can live with what I see. That has to be enough.